Already? SpaceX begins repairs and inspections after the 7th Starship flight. How much is needed? Ship 34 begins its testing campaign ahead of Flight 8. What's left till it's ready? Work kicks into high gear on all 3 of Starship's launch pads. What's the rush? SpaceX flies to the moon. Blue Origin finally makes it to orbit and almost back. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. Flight 7's dust has now settled, and if you thought that meant SpaceX would take a break, you might be off. Starbase has been flooded with activity, with new things happening at a pace that is almost unheard of, even for SpaceX. Of course, the first order of business after landing a skyscraper on a pair of chopsticks is to bring it back to the ground. And that is precisely what SpaceX did shortly after recovering the booster. Then, on the night of the 17th, just a day after getting this booster back, it was rolled down Highway 4, back to the build site and into the Mega Bay. Welcome home, Booster 14, everyone give it up for the hero of Flight 7. From here, SpaceX will be able to inspect the booster to see how well it survived and to see if any improvements made following some anomalies on Flight 5 helped. Most notable among these are any changes SpaceX may have made to help prevent the engine bells from warping on re-entry, which was one of the more significant pieces of damage following Flight 5. Of course, the rocket's first stage wasn't the only stage that needed some checks following the launch. Since the second stage was lost, that leaves stage 0. Thanks to Redline helicopter tours, we can see the massive scorch marks left on the pad. However, overall, it and the surrounding equipment appear to have held up pretty well. Yes. Upon closer inspection, there appear to be a few areas that will need extra attention after this flight. One of those is the booster quick disconnect, which on the surface may look intact. However, comparing it to how it looked after previous flights, such as Flight 5 and 6, reveals that some flames got a little closer than SpaceX likely wanted. Some areas appear amazingly charred, especially around the flexible fuel lines, which have turned from bright red to almost black. Hopefully this is only cosmetic damage. However, this quick disconnect, as well as the rest of the quick disconnects on the launch mount, have been a problem for SpaceX for quite a while. This is why after each flight, SpaceX raises what Starship fans refer to as the dance platform. This gives workers extra room to easily make repairs and inspections to the 20 Raptor quick disconnects around the launch mount's ring. Interestingly, the ship's quick disconnect appears to have held up remarkably well, as there is once again no visible damage following this flight. Yes. On many previous flights, the SQD was extremely damaged, with part replacements being commonplace. However, it appears that whatever SpaceX's engineers have been doing on the recent flights is working and will hopefully continue to work. So fingers crossed we won't see any major work here in the coming weeks. Pad A has been receiving a lot of work, as it often needs heavy refurbishment after each flight. However, this does not align with SpaceX's eventual goal of rapid reusability and quick turnaround times for Starship. That is why they hope to fix this with Pad B, which is set to come online likely much sooner than you think. Now, over the past few weeks, it may seem like very little work has been done on this pad. However, there was a good reason for this. SpaceX was waiting specifically until after Flight 7, and with that now out of the way, it's full steam ahead, as SpaceX has now officially begun stacking operations for the chopsticks. We've eagerly anticipated this for months. Since the chopsticks were first shipped from Cape Canaveral to Starbase, now it is finally happening. It started just hours after Flight 7 concluded, as teams began swarming Pad B to reconstruct the chopsticks' support scaffolding. Then, on the night of the 17th, during the same road closure that SpaceX used to roll the booster back to the production site, they also rolled the chopsticks carriage from Sanchez to Pad B. Woohoo! The 2 LR-11000 cranes were then quickly hooked up, lifting it into the air and rotating it onto the support scaffolding. SpaceX accomplished all this within just 2 days of launching the world's largest rocket once again. Fast doesn't even begin to describe this rate of development. And if you thought that was it, you'd be sorely mistaken, as this is all still just the tip of the iceberg. And before I tell you about that, our channel metrics show over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help improve the channel and double check that you've hit the subscribe button to stay up to date. Like this video if you appreciate the content and become a Y supporter for extra content. Secure your access to up to 7 picture galleries per week, satellite, aerial and ground photos and 3D animations, chat with me and gain more insights on the topic you love. And if you want to do something crazy, check out redlineheli.com/Felix for a once-in-a-lifetime experience flying in a helicopter above Starbase. The Redline helicopter team is waiting for you. They'll show you the same views our photographers get on their Starbase flights. That's redline.com/Felix for $25 off. We're waiting for you. You rock. Back to the second tower. Along with the chopsticks carriage, SpaceX also rolled and installed a cryogenic vaporizer. This device heats cryogenic fluids so they turn back into gas and can be used for pressurization. They also began finalizing this massive segment of cryogenic pipes that will connect Pad B to the fuel farm and began prep work for the next segment. And of course, they performed massive amounts of earthwork both in and around the upcoming flame trench. There's truly been no lack of work at the launch site, and I've even had to leave out a few smaller things because the video would otherwise be too long. And we're still just talking about the time between Flight 7 and now. SpaceX is clearly pushing to get this pad up and running, and that can be seen in the work being done on the parts of Pad B, which are still at Sanchez. Starting with the rest of the chopsticks, all the scaffolding has now been removed. However, some minor work is still being done, such as the installation of the catch pads, which are designed to dampen the force of the chopsticks catching the booster. It shouldn't take long for SpaceX to install these, and then they'll be ready to roll these to the pad to meet the carriage. Next is the launch mount itself, which has continued to see work. They are finally sealing up the gaps in the mount, which likely signals that many of the internal components have already been installed. And last but not least, for Pad B is the flame diverter, which is now entering its final phase of construction as workers have begun installing the protective outer layer of piping on the mount. While it may not look like these pipes could withstand the direct blast of 33 Raptor engines, SpaceX will flow water through them to ensure they can withstand the heat and that the stronger frame beneath can take the force. An interesting aspect of this flame diverter is its relative size and steepness. For the size of the rocket it's launching, it's not actually that large. Hopefully it's large enough. This can also give us a good idea of just how deep SpaceX will be digging at the pad. It appears they won't need to dig much deeper. This means things are rapidly progressing and this pad will likely be done in the next few months. What is your guess? How long until we see a Starship on it getting ready for fueling? Give me a month in the comments, let's see what you guys think. With the extra pad, SpaceX will be able to launch even more rockets. However, as of now, they have only launched 7 Starships. Let's talk about the elephant in the room next, because after the launch is before the launch, right? How long till SpaceX can raise that number even higher with Flight 8? Well, it appears work is already progressing rapidly as SpaceX focuses on getting everything ready for that flight as you watch this. But for everyone, even SpaceX workers, there must also be some time to relax. Let's talk about that for a moment. Some fun news coming away. We've just launched the Warhammer Guild to bring our community together in Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus. You remember the board game where you lovingly had to color your miniature heroes and plan their moves on the tabletop? Or are you new to the Warhammer universe? Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus looks as pleasant to the eye as my heroes did back then to me. With a loving eye for details, it brings back some very pleasant memories. Now, I started playing Tacticus, a fast-paced tactical game that brings the Warhammer universe to your fingertips. Assemble over 80 champions from 18 factions, each with unique abilities. The battles are quick, strategic, and perfect for playing between tasks, whether you're waiting in line, relaxing, or just taking a quick break. Join me for guild raids, PvP, live events, and let's explore Tacticus together. I'm just starting out myself, so we'll figure out the best strategies as a team. You can finish level 15 and redeem the code HELLOJAN until February 1st to get 2,000 gold and 50 blackstones. Simply download Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus on your phone, click the link or scan the QR code below. See you on the battlefield and in our Warhammer guild. Search for me, Felix, and let's play together. Woo! Alright, back to work when launch. SpaceX's focus appeared to shift to the next flight even before Flight 7 took off. On the 15th, a day before the flight, Ship 34, the next ship in line, was rolled out to the Mega Bay down Highway 4 and over to Massey's. Then, after everything calmed down from the flight on the 17th, the ship underwent its first cryo test, with its top liquid methane tank being filled with cryogenic nitrogen and then detanked. Just a few hours later, a second cryo test began and the tanks were filled once more. Everything appeared to go well, and the next day the ship was tested one final time, ending the ship's cryoproofing campaign. Done! That's how quickly this can be accomplished. Fascinating. Seeing that this testing procedure was relatively similar to that performed on Ship 33, it is likely that everything went well. However, to be sure of that, teams will need to get a closer look at it in Mega Bay 2. Ship 34 left the cryo testing stand that night and rolled down Highway 4. Chop chop! It then entered the Mega Bay. From here, teams can verify how these tests went. Another thing teams will be doing is finalizing the ship. There are still quite a few things left to be done. The most prominent among these are the aft flaps. It doesn't have any yet. However, the ship will also need its engines, as well as a plethora of upgrades and improvements that need to be installed following the knowledge gained from the failure of Ship 33. Hopefully this ship can redeem Block 2, as it didn't exactly get off to the best start. But in the end, this is why they test. I said it on the launch livestream multiple times. If you're one of those saying that SpaceX is failing because none of the Starships are delivering payload, think again. SpaceX isn't just repeating an old rocket design. They could have just upgraded Falcon 9, arguably the most reliable rocket out there. Instead, they chose not to, and it's not the only Block 2 ship on the way. The next one in line, and now likely the first one to attempt a catch if everything goes well on the next flight, is Ship 35. It is growing yet again. On the 17th, the common dome for this Block 2 ship was rolled into Mega Bay 2 for stacking. I mean, how can they even be so fast? It should hopefully be stacked quickly. However, it appears to be taking around the same time as Ship 34 to stack, meaning SpaceX needs to step up its game a bit if it wants to reach its goal of producing a Starship every few days. I know, it's insane. Unfortunately, as these are still prototypes, SpaceX just can't finalize certain procedures and equipment until after all the kinks have been worked out. After Flight 7, it might take a little longer than we may have hoped for that to happen. But once that does happen, SpaceX will quickly exceed its 25 launches a year cap, which is currently in place at Starbase. This is why we've been watching the tower here in Florida for any signs of activity, and we are definitely seeing some now. Massive work has yet again picked up here in my neighborhood. Yes! I guess Starbase isn't the only launch complex that has been firing on all cylinders lately. Until now, the most work we have seen has been on the Florida Tower, as the original constructed Starship launch mount here was torn down. However, that is now finally changing, as continuous flight augers have been spotted drilling foundation piles, which is always the first step ahead of launch mount construction. Yes. This is huge, as now that SpaceX is beginning work on the launch mount, things should come together relatively quickly. In fact, recent satellite imagery helps to confirm this launch mount work. Just down the road at SpaceX's production facility, supports for the new design of an orbital launch mount have been spotted. This means SpaceX should begin constructing that any day now. If SpaceX can maintain the same pace here as they do in Texas, this launch pad may be online before the end of the year. After all, that is the plan SpaceX announced a while back: have a Starship pad ready at the Cape by the end of 2025. We know Starship will encounter a couple of bottlenecks when launching at a high cadence from Starbase. However, the Cape is used to rocket launches. Getting permission to fly hundreds or possibly even thousands of times a year hopefully shouldn't be an issue. Not to mention, it'll be a lot easier for me to watch a launch if all I need to do is step outside, so I might be a little biased. Nonetheless, Starship getting more launch pads is nothing but a positive, and I for one am looking forward to being able to go anywhere in the world, or possibly even off-world, to watch a Starship launch in the future. Starship will undoubtedly change the game. However, before it comes along, the Falcon 9 has already upended the entire launch industry by offering launches at extremely competitive rates due to its reusability. Because of this, it is set to launch hundreds of missions this year, including multiple missions to the moon. The launches have officially kicked off with not one but two moonlanders heading to the moon at the same time from not only two different companies, but two entirely different countries. I'm talking about Firefly's Blue Ghost lander, which is part of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program, and iSpace's Haku2R, aka the Resilience lander. As is usual for the Falcon 9, the launch flawlessly placed both of the landers on a high-energy trajectory from where they could each then take on the rest of the way to the moon themselves. Interestingly, both landers are taking surprisingly different approaches to complete this final step to intercept the moon. They'll both land at different times, with Blue Ghost set to land in around a month, whereas Haku2R is set to land in about a month and a half. Blue Ghost is set to be pretty interesting. It'll carry numerous commercial payloads to the moon for NASA, universities, and anyone else willing to pay. Because of that, it has numerous experiments on it, such as several cameras, a drill to measure subsurface temperatures, and what I consider to be the most interesting, numerous regolith abrasion experiments to test ways to mitigate the harmful effects of lunar regolith on certain materials such as fabric. Moondust is like the sharpest sandpaper you can imagine. A grain of it is as sharp as a razor. Millions of razors. Not nice. This includes the EDS, or Electrodynamic Dust Shield experiment. It uses a magnetic field to form a force field and repel the charged dust particles away. For long-term habitation of the moon, it is essential to figure out how to deal with the sandpaper-like regolith, which quickly eats away most materials, such as those on a spacesuit. Not good. Haku2R also has numerous interesting experiments on board for both public and private partners. These include a small rover designed to detach shortly after landing, a food production experiment, and a little red house. A what? Yep, iSpace has decided to fly a moon house on this lander, and the reasoning behind this makes sense. The manifest for this lander is a fair bit shorter than that of Blue Ghost's. iSpace is still testing and doesn't want to risk more valuable payloads before proving it can land on the moon. Considering their last mission didn't exactly have a happy ending, this is understandable. But whether or not it's launching a small artistic house or some next generation experiment, just getting to the moon is a huge accomplishment. Best of luck to both landers, as well as the many more that are set to land on the moon this year. One of the key factors of this new era of spaceflight has been rapidly dropping launch costs. 99% of this drop in price can be attributed to one rocket, the Falcon 9, as it has had a monopoly on cost-effective, reliable, and high-performance launches for the last 10 years, since it was first able to land its booster in 2015. However, after all that time, it now has a true competitor, as New Glenn has finally launched. This rocket has been in development for around 13 years now, with initial development beginning in 2012, with engineers putting in thousands of hours to ensure this rocket was fully developed by the time it had its first launch. This is a different philosophy from the break it fast and build it faster mentality of SpaceX. However, it does have its upsides, as shown by New Glenn's maiden launch. After numerous delays that pushed the flight from late December of last year to early this month, things seemed promising, as every pre-flight test had been checked off the list. Then, as the days counted down, weather and a few technical issues began to get in the way. Then on the 13th, we were all prepped and ready, as New Glenn was filled with propellant and the countdown began. And then, scrub. Unfortunately, a leaky fuel line, which is relatively common especially when dealing with hydrogen, led to a scrub. Fortunately, this only pushed us back a few days, and in the early morning of the 16th, just hours before Starship was set to take flight as well, New Glenn was once again fueled to the top, and this time the countdown continued. And then, liftoff. The beautiful blue glow of the methane engines at night was truly a sight to behold, appearing as bright as the sun as it took to the skies for the first time. All 7 of the BE-4 engines powered this gigantic rocket off the pad, as its low thrust-to-weight ratio became apparent, taking the rocket a significant amount of time to leave the pad. Fortunately, it did successfully leave the pad, and the first stage successfully completed its mission before detaching from the second, so they could both continue their missions separately. SpaceX's camera coverage for launches has spoiled us a bit, as there were very few views after stage separation. However, that doesn't mean nothing was happening, as the booster began its entry burn to slow itself down as it entered the atmosphere. Until shortly after this burn concluded, telemetry went out on the booster and never returned. Unfortunately, it was later revealed that the booster did not make it to the landing and instead appeared to have had a rapid unscheduled disassembly on re-entry. The second stage appeared to have a much better time, as its two hydrogen-powered BE-3U engines powered it all the way to orbit. Wow, so Blue Origin was successfully able to go from this tiny suborbital to possibly the third largest orbital rocket in the world and the fifth largest ever built. We still don't have a reason for why the booster didn't make the landing, with the most likely explanation being that it was lost due to entry dynamics. However, that is only speculation, and given how secretive Blue Origin typically is, it's unlikely we'll get an official explanation anytime soon. Even with the failure of the landing, this is truly an incredible accomplishment by the Blue Origin team, and seeing as we got a reminder of just how difficult making it to orbit is just a few hours later with Starship, they have a lot to be proud of. And I'm sure Blue Origin will be able to learn from this and have better luck with their next landing attempt. That's it for today. Remember to smash the like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our brand new Starship Block 2 design are both up. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. Also, check out our print store at shop.whataboutit.space to buy a picture for your favorite wall. A significant amount of every purchase goes directly to our photographers, and if you want to learn more about all the reusable rockets and moon landers planning to come online this year, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Little work has been done. Very little. This will be digging in Temega Bay. Which quickly